He walked into his own company as a nobody, a janitor. No one knew he was the CEO. They mocked him. They ordered him around. They treated him like he didn't matter at all. But every insult, every secret, every betrayal, he was watching it all. Because this wasn't just a disguise, it was a test. And when the truth is finally revealed, the entire company will regret the day they underestimated him. The morning sun reflected off the glass towers of Carter Global Industries, a multinational corporation worth billions. Inside its headquarters, employees rushed through the lobby with coffee in hand, unaware that today would mark the beginning of something no one could imagine. At the service entrance, a man in a worn gray uniform stepped inside quietly. His name was John Miller. At least, that was the name on his badge. In reality, he was Ethan Carter, the 38-year-old CEO of Carter Global Industries. He had sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to notice everything at once, short, neatly styled black hair hidden under a cap, and a calm but intimidating presence that he deliberately suppressed. Ethan was known in the business world as a decisive leader, cold when necessary, strategic under pressure, and impossible to deceive. But today, he was invisible. A janitor. He adjusted his cleaning cart and walked forward without drawing attention. At the HR desk, Melissa Grant, a 30-year-old assistant with tied-back brown hair, soft facial features, and a nervous personality shaped by constant pressure from upper management, barely glanced at his file. "Janitor position? Just sign here," she said quickly, already moving on to the next applicant. The process took less than 2 minutes. No background check, no deep verification, just paperwork. Ethan noted it silently. So this is how easily trust is given and taken. Near the entrance, Mr. Lewis, a 62-year-old security guard with a weathered face, gray mustache, and sharp instincts built from decades of working corporate security, narrowed his eyes as Ethan passed through the gate. Something felt off. The way John walked was too controlled, too aware. Not like a man who cleaned floors for a living. "You knew?" Mr. Lewis asked. "Yes," Ethan replied calmly. A short pause. Mr. Lewis grunted. "Just do your job and stay out of trouble." But he didn't look convinced. Inside the building, Ethan began his first assignment, cleaning the lower office floors. The environment was different from what he was used to, not in structure but in behavior. People didn't look at him. They stepped around him. Some didn't even bother acknowledging his presence. That was expected. What he didn't expect was what he heard. "I told you, janitors don't matter. Just dump the work on them. Let him clean it. It's not like he'll complain." A man nearby laughed. That man was Ryan Collins, a 33-year-old mid-level operations manager with slicked back hair, an arrogant posture, and a personality built on authority and ego. He was the type who believed hierarchy justified disrespect. He tossed a pile of trash bags toward Ethan. "Hey, janitor," Ryan said casually. "Don't miss the executive hallway. I don't want to see a single stain." Ethan looked at him for a brief moment, then nodded. "Understood." No reaction, no emotion. But inside he remembered everything. Every tone, every word, every person. Because this wasn't just cleaning, it was observation. And Carter Global Industries had no idea. The person they were ordering around was the man who owned every inch of the building. The upper floors of Carter Global Industries were nothing like the service corridors below. Glass walls, polished marble floors, and the constant sound of success filled the air. It was the world Ethan Carter had built. Yet today, he moved through it as if he didn't belong. Dressed as John Miller, the janitor, Ethan pushed his cleaning cart into the executive wing. His expression remained neutral, but his eyes never stopped moving. The first person to approach him was Ryan Collins, the 33-year-old operations manager responsible for the executive floor. Ryan had a tall, athletic build, slick, dark hair, and a confident smile that often turned into arrogance when dealing with people beneath his rank. Years of small promotions had inflated his ego, making him believe authority meant superiority. He stopped Ethan with a gesture of his hand. "You," Ryan said, pointing at the corridor. "This whole area needs to be spotless by noon. Executive meeting today. Don't embarrass us." Ethan nodded slightly. "Understood." Ryan smirked. "Try not to be too slow. People here don't like delays." Then he walked away without another word. As Ethan began cleaning, two employees passing by whispered loudly enough for him to hear. "That's the new janitor? He looks lost." "Probably won't last a week. They always hire weak ones for this floor." The speaker was Lisa Morgan, a 27-year-old administrative assistant with styled blonde hair, sharp nails, and a personality shaped by office gossip culture. She wasn't cruel by nature, but she enjoyed social hierarchy and attention. Her colleague, Brian Lee, a 31-year-old finance associate with tired eyes and a sarcastic tone, chuckled. "If he cleans like he looks, we're in trouble." They both laughed as they walked away. Ethan continued working silently. As he moved through the executive hallway, he noticed something more important than the insults. Disorganization. Confidential documents left on desks. Unlocked screens displaying financial dashboards. Sensitive reports casually printed and discarded without care. He stopped for a moment, observing. This level of negligence, he thought. It's not just carelessness, it's systemic. At the far end of the corridor, Emily Carter, a 29-year-old senior project coordinator with a slim figure, neat brown hair tied in a professional bun, and a calm but slightly exhausted expression, stepped out of a meeting room. She had a reputation for being one of the few competent managers in the company, though recent months had clearly worn her down. She noticed Ethan quietly cleaning near the doorway. Unlike others, she didn't insult him. Instead, she hesitated. "Hey, make sure that area near the server room stays clear," she said softly. "There's sensitive equipment there." Her tone wasn't rude, just cautious, as if she had seen enough chaos in the company to no longer trust anyone's competence. Ethan nodded. "I will." Emily looked at him for a second longer than necessary, then walked away. Something about him felt unusual, but she couldn't place it. Back near the center of the floor, Ryan watched Ethan from a distance. "He moves too slowly," Ryan muttered. "Maybe we should replace him." He pulled out his phone and sent a message to HR. "Janitor on executive floor underperforming. Consider replacement." Ethan saw nothing. He heard nothing. But he remembered everything. Every insult, every careless decision, every act of disrespect. Because this wasn't just his company anymore. It was his test environment. And everyone inside it was part of the experiment. By the third day inside Carter Global Industries, Ethan Carter, still disguised as John Miller, the janitor, had already mapped more than just hallways. He had begun mapping behavior. What he saw was more dangerous than disrespect. It was intent. The financial floor was unusually active that afternoon. Employees moved faster, voices lower, doors closing more frequently. Ethan pushed his cleaning cart slowly through the corridor, appearing invisible as always. But his attention locked onto one person. Linda Brooks, a 34-year-old accountant with straight black hair, pale skin, and a nervous but calculated personality shaped by years of financial pressure, sat at her desk pretending to review spreadsheets. However, her eyes constantly flicked toward the door. When no one was watching, she opened a secure folder on her screen, then quickly transferred files to an external drive hidden inside her drawer. Ethan paused in the hallway, pretending to clean the glass wall. This isn't normal workflow, he thought. This was extraction. A few minutes later, Kevin Hart, a 40-year-old IT technician with messy brown hair, round glasses, and a tired expression from years of overwork, walked past the server monitoring station. He glanced at the logs and frowned. "There's unusual access traffic," he muttered. "Financial database keeps getting pinged from internal accounts outside schedule." He shrugged it off. "No alert from security. Must be system noise." But Ethan had already noted the inconsistency. At the same time, Ryan Collins appeared again, walking through the corridor with his usual arrogance. He was speaking loudly on the phone. "Yes, just make sure compliance doesn't look too deep into Q3 reports," he said casually. We don't need unnecessary questions. He ended the call and noticed Ethan cleaning near the wall. Still here? Ryan scoffed. Try not to get in the way of real work. Ethan simply nodded and continued cleaning. Ryan walked away, unaware that every word had been recorded mentally. Later that afternoon, Ethan made his move. He pushed his cleaning cart toward the restricted server hallway. A biometric lock stood in his way. Restricted access, finance core systems. A normal janitor would stop here. Ethan did not. Instead, he casually wiped the nearby glass panels, observing camera angles, guard rotation timing, and access logs displayed on a wall monitor. He noticed something critical. The server room had unusually frequent manual overrides. Too frequent for standard maintenance, too precise for random access. Nearby, Emily Carter, the 29-year-old project coordinator with neat brown hair tied in a bun, calm eyes, and a slightly exhausted but intelligent presence, walked out of a meeting and spotted him again. "You're cleaning here again?" she asked, slightly concerned. Ethan nodded. "They told me to maintain this corridor." Emily hesitated. "That area is sensitive. IT shouldn't even be—" She stopped herself mid-sentence as if she had said too much. Her expression tightened. "Just be careful," she added quietly before walking away. Ethan watched her leave. She knew something, but she wasn't ready to say it. That night, Ethan stayed behind after most employees left. He entered the server maintenance logs under the pretense of cleaning the storage area nearby. No one questioned a janitor in empty hallways. What he found confirmed everything. Repeated data exports from finance systems, internal credentials used outside assigned roles, and one recurring access pattern: Linda Brooks, Ryan Collins, and an unknown third account with admin privileges. Ethan's expression remained calm, but inside, the system he built was starting to reveal its rot. For the first time since entering Carter Global Industries in disguise, Ethan Carter noticed something unexpected. Not corruption, not arrogance, but kindness. In the break area near the lower offices, Ethan, still John Miller, the janitor, was quietly cleaning a table when a soft voice called out. "Hey, you missed lunch again, didn't you?" It was Emma Collins, a 26-year-old executive assistant with warm brown eyes, shoulder-length wavy hair, and a gentle personality that stood out in an otherwise cold corporate environment. She had a habit of noticing small things others ignored, a trait shaped by years of being overlooked herself. She placed a small food container on the table. "I made too much," she said lightly. "You can take it." Ethan looked at her for a moment. Most people in this building saw him as invisible. She did not. "Thank you," he replied calmly. Emma smiled and walked away without waiting for praise. Later that evening, near the main security desk, Mr. Lewis, the 62-year-old security guard with weathered skin, deep-set eyes, and a calm but observant personality shaped by decades of watching people come and go, leaned back in his chair as Ethan passed by. "You work too quietly," Mr. Lewis said suddenly. Ethan stopped. "Is that a problem?" Mr. Lewis smirked slightly. "Depends. Quiet people in this building usually fall into two categories. Either they're harmless," he paused, "or they're hiding something big." Ethan said nothing. Mr. Lewis continued anyway. "I've been here 20 years. I've seen managers come and go, but I've also seen things they don't want anyone talking about." He lowered his voice. "People upstairs. They're not all clean." Ethan listened carefully. This was not gossip, it was experience. Meanwhile, in a different corridor, Ryan Collins was arguing loudly on the phone. "Yes, just adjust the figures," he said impatiently. "Nobody reads the details anyway." He ended the call and turned to see Ethan nearby. "Still here?" Ryan scoffed. "You really don't get tired, do you?" Ethan nodded slightly and continued cleaning. Ryan shook his head and walked off. But unlike before, Ethan's reaction wasn't just passive observation. He was starting to connect patterns. That afternoon, Ethan took a short break in the cafeteria where employees rarely paid attention to janitorial staff. Emma appeared again, sitting across from him without hesitation. "You don't talk much," she said. I observe more than I speak, Ethan replied. She tilted her head. That sounds lonely. A pause. Ethan didn't answer immediately. It wasn't loneliness. It was calculation. But something about her tone made him reconsider saying that. Instead, he said, Not necessarily. Emma smiled again. Good answer. From a distance, Mr. Lewis watched them briefly, then muttered to himself, That one doesn't look like a janitor at all. For the first time since the experiment began, Ethan allowed himself a new realization. Not everyone inside Carter Global Industries was corrupt. Not everyone was part of the problem. Some were simply trying to survive inside it, and those people might become the key to what came next. The deeper Ethan Carter stayed inside Carter Global Industries, the clearer the truth became. This company was not simply mismanaged, it was being controlled from the shadows. That evening, Ethan, still disguised as John Miller, the janitor, moved quietly through the restricted hallway near the executive conference wing. The lights were dim, and most employees had already left, but voices were still coming from inside Conference Room B. He stopped near the door, listening carefully. Inside the room, 3 men were seated around a table. The first was Victor Hale, the 45-year-old CFO of the company. He was a sharp-looking man with neatly combed, gray-streaked hair, thin-framed glasses, and a personality built on cold calculation. Years of financial authority had made him confident, but also dangerously greedy. Beside him sat Derek Moore, a 48-year-old operations director with a heavy build, rough voice, and a reputation for aggressive decision-making. He had a habit of speaking like every problem could be solved with force or money. The third man made Ethan pause. It was Ryan Collins. Ryan, the 33-year-old operations manager Ethan had been observing, now sat differently. No longer arrogant in public, he was tense, attentive, and obedient. His usual confidence had shifted into something more controlled, like someone following orders rather than giving them. Ethan watched through a slightly open crack in the door. Victor spoke first. Quarterly reports need to be adjusted again, he said calmly. We move another portion of the project funds into offshore accounts. No discrepancies. Derek nodded. Internal audit won't catch it if we keep rotating the entries. Ryan hesitated for a fraction of a second. Then he spoke. And if someone notices? Victor smiled slightly. Then we make sure they don't stay long enough to report it. Ethan's expression remained unchanged. But internally, the system he built was becoming clearer. This wasn't random corruption. It was organized. Outside the room, Ethan discreetly activated a recording device hidden in his cleaning cart. A small lens positioned near the ventilation gap captured audio and partial video. Every word was being stored. Every decision documented. As the conversation continued, Derek leaned forward. We also need to restructure the supplier contracts. The new vendor deal increases our margins by 18%. Victor nodded. And reduces traceability. Ryan added quietly, I'll handle procurement adjustments. His voice lacked resistance. That was important. He wasn't leading this, he was serving it. At that moment, footsteps echoed down the hallway. Ethan immediately resumed cleaning, pretending to polish the floor tiles near the door. A new figure appeared in the corridor. It was Sophia Blake, a 37-year-old legal compliance officer with tightly pulled back hair, sharp eyes, and a personality shaped by years of reading between corporate lies. She was not directly involved in the meeting, but she paused briefly when she saw Ethan. Her gaze lingered. You're still working this late? She asked. Ethan nodded. Sophia studied him for a second longer than normal, then continued walking. But she frowned slightly. Something about this janitor didn't feel ordinary. Inside the room, the meeting continued. Ethan captured everything. Every scheme, every name, every transaction. When the meeting finally ended, Victor's final words echoed through the door. If anyone outside this room becomes a problem, we eliminate the risk early. The door opened. Ethan immediately turned away, pushing his cart down the hallway as if nothing had happened. Ryan walked out last, glancing briefly at Ethan. Their eyes met for half a second. Neither spoke. But something subtle shifted in that moment. Suspicion. And for the first time since the experiment began, Ethan realized the rot didn't just exist in the company. It sat at the very top of it. The atmosphere inside Carter Global Industries shifted overnight. What was once quiet observation for Ethan Carter had now become something far more dangerous: surveillance. It began in the early morning. In the security control room, Mark Reynolds, a 41-year-old IT security chief with a lean build, sharp cheekbones, and an obsessive personality shaped by years of tracking system breaches, replayed footage from the previous night. On the screen, a janitor moved through a restricted hallway. Too slowly, too deliberately. Mark leaned forward. "That's not normal cleaning behavior," he muttered. He zoomed in. The man labeled John Miller paused near the server corridor for exactly 12 seconds longer than necessary. Long enough to observe camera angles. Long enough to memorize blind spots. Mark narrowed his eyes. Why would a janitor care about security cameras? Meanwhile, Ethan, still in disguise, continued his routine as if nothing had changed. But he could feel it, the shift. Eyes were starting to notice him more. Patterns were being analyzed. He was no longer invisible. In the executive floor, Emma Collins, the 26-year-old assistant with warm brown eyes, gentle facial expressions, and a deeply observant personality shaped by years of working under pressure, noticed something unusual. She walked up to Ethan while he was cleaning near the break room. "You're being watched," she said quietly. Ethan paused slightly. "I know." Emma frowned. "Mark from IT pulled security logs this morning. They flagged movement in restricted zones." She hesitated. "And your badge history looks inconsistent." At that moment, Ethan understood the risk had escalated. The system was beginning to react, not to corruption, but to him. Elsewhere, Ryan Collins stood in a meeting with Victor Hale. Ryan, usually arrogant, now looked tense. His slick confidence had been replaced by controlled caution. "They're reviewing access logs," Ryan said. "If they trace it back—" Victor interrupted coldly. "Then you ensure it doesn't get traced." Ryan nodded immediately. No hesitation, no resistance. Back in the security office, Mark continued reviewing footage. Then something unexpected appeared. Emma Collins accessing the same corridor logs from her terminal. Mark frowned. Now there were two anomalies, not just the janitor, but someone protecting him. Mark leaned back. "This is getting interesting," he said quietly. He opened a new file. Subject: unidentified behavior pattern, janitor, John Miller. Meanwhile, Ethan stood alone near the storage hallway, processing everything. The surveillance, the suspicion, the internal attention shift. And then Emma approached him again, more urgently this time. "I checked your cleaning schedule," she said. "You weren't assigned to that corridor last night." Ethan met her eyes. A brief silence. Then she added softly, "If someone asks, I moved you there." That was a risk. A direct lie to protect him. Ethan studied her for a moment. She didn't know who he was, but she had chosen to help him anyway. From a distance, Mark watched security feeds showing Emma and John Miller interacting. He now had two flagged individuals, one anomaly, and one protector. And for the first time since Ethan entered the company, the system was no longer just under observation. It was starting to observe back. The walls inside Carter Global Industries no longer felt like a workplace to Ethan Carter. They felt like a cage built by his own company. And now, he had the key to break it open. In a hidden maintenance room beneath the executive floor, Ethan, still disguised as John Miller, the janitor, sat quietly in front of a secured terminal. The room was dim, filled with humming servers and blinking lights, far away from normal employee traffic. But tonight he wasn't cleaning, he was collecting evidence. On the screen, hundreds of files were already decrypted. Financial transfers, offshore accounts, internal memos, altered audit logs. Everything pointed to one conclusion. The corruption was not accidental, it was structured, deliberate, and protected. At the center of it all was Victor Hale, the 45-year-old CFO with cold eyes, precise speech, and a calculating mind shaped by years of financial manipulation. He was preparing another transfer, $12 million, moved quietly through a chain of offshore accounts under shell companies. Beside him in the logs was Derek Moore, ensuring operational cover-ups. And most concerning of all, Ryan Collins. Ryan, the 33-year-old operations manager with sharp features and an aggressive personality normally used to command lower employees, now appeared in internal records with deeper involvement than expected. He wasn't just following orders anymore, he was executing them. But something about him had changed recently. Suspicion. He had begun watching Ethan more closely. Earlier that day, in a quiet hallway, Ryan had paused when he saw John cleaning near the restricted elevator. His eyes narrowed. "You're always in places you shouldn't be," Ryan muttered under his breath. Ethan said nothing. But Ryan noticed something else. Confidence beneath silence. Not fear, not submission. Something controlled. Meanwhile, in the lower security office, Mr. Lewis, the 62-year-old guard with weathered hands, tired eyes, and a deeply intuitive understanding of human behavior, handed Ethan a small access card. "You didn't get this from me," Lewis said quietly. Ethan accepted it. "This gives you temporary access to archived compliance records," Lewis added. "If anyone asks, I lost it." Ethan looked at him. "Why help me?" Lewis sighed. "I've worked here too long to pretend I don't know when something's rotten." Back upstairs, Mark Reynolds was still watching the surveillance feeds. He had now created a full profile. Subject A, Janitor John Miller, anomalies in restricted zones. Subject B, Emma Collins, unauthorized system interference. Subject C, unknown internal actor manipulating financial logs. 3 threads, 1 hidden pattern, but no identity, yet. In the server room, Ethan finally accessed the final layer of data, and what he saw changed everything. A complete financial map of the company. Not just corruption, but systematic extraction of company assets over years. Millions diverted, reports falsified, audits manipulated, and approvals signed at the highest level. Ethan leaned back slightly, expression unchanged, but the weight of truth was now absolute. Outside, footsteps approached. Fast. Ryan. For the first time since the experiment began, Ethan felt something shift in the system. Not danger, not suspicion, but proximity. The moment before exposure. The emergency meeting was called at exactly 9 a.m. No one knew why. But everyone could feel it. Something big was about to happen at Carter Global Industries. The main conference hall was filled with executives, managers, and senior staff. The atmosphere was tense, almost suffocating. At the front of the room stood Victor Hale, the 45-year-old CFO with pale skin, sharp glasses, and a controlled but nervous expression. Beside him were Derek Moore and several senior directors. And in the crowd, Ryan Collins sat stiffly, his jaw tight, eyes scanning the room. Something felt wrong, too organized, too final. The doors opened. A man in a janitor uniform stepped inside. It was John Miller. Ryan frowned immediately. "This is a joke," he whispered. "Why is a janitor in here?" But no one stopped him, because no one understood what was about to happen. Ethan Carter walked slowly to the front of the room, and then he stopped pretending. He removed his cap. Silence fell instantly. His posture changed, his presence expanded, and for the first time, everyone saw not a janitor, but the CEO of Carter Global Industries. Gasps filled the room. Ryan froze. Victor's face went pale. Derek stood up immediately. "What is this?" Ethan raised a hand. "Sit down." The tone was calm, but absolute, and Derek obeyed. Ethan activated the screen behind him. Files appeared. Transfers, emails, offshore accounts, audio recordings. Every secret the company had buried, all exposed in seconds. Victor stepped back. "This is illegal," Ethan interrupted. "No, what's illegal is what you've been doing for years inside my company." Security entered the room, but not to protect the executives. They moved toward Victor and Derek. Handcuffs followed. The CFO tried to speak, but no words came out. For the first time, the system they controlled turned against them. Ryan stood up suddenly. "This doesn't involve me," he said quickly. "I was just following instructions." Ethan looked at him. Just 1 second of silence. That was enough. "Terminate his employment," Ethan said. No anger, no emotion, just execution of truth. Ryan's face turned pale. "You can't just—" "You already did," Ethan replied. Security escorted him out. In the back of the room, Emma Collins stood quietly, her eyes filled with shock but also relief. She had always trusted something was off, but never imagined this scale of truth. Beside her, Mr. Lewis simply nodded. "I told you," he muttered. He wasn't just a janitor. Mark Reynolds stood frozen near the security feed station. Every anomaly he had tracked suddenly aligned. "Janitor. CEO," he whispered. "It was him all along." In the following days, the company collapsed its old structure. Victor, Derek, and the entire Shadow Network were placed under investigation. Ryan was permanently removed from all corporate roles. But the system did not collapse with them. It was rebuilt. Ethan appointed new leadership. Emma was promoted to senior executive assistant to the board. Mr. Lewis was given a formal security director advisory role, and transparency systems were rewritten from the ground up. That evening, Ethan stood alone in his office overlooking the city. No disguise, no silence, just clarity. The experiment was over, and Carter Global Industries was finally his again. The story ends here, but the questions remain. Ethan disguised himself as a janitor, suffered humiliation, and exposed corruption inside his own company. But what would you have done? Would you reveal your identity early, or stay hidden until the end? Was Ethan right to secretly test everyone around him? Did Ryan deserve a second chance, or was firing him the only solution? And if you were Emma, would you still help someone without knowing who they really are? There is no single right answer, only choices. Tell me in the comments what you would have done. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more dramatic office stories.